Welcome to Hillsboro Community TV, the program entitled Hillsboro Bicentennial 1803-2003. This program is produced by Ron Hennison Sr. My name is Jim Winter. In the studio today, we have 5 former Hillsboro mayors and the current mayor. We're going to talk to these mayors today about items that happened during their tenure during the Hillsboro administrations dating back to 1964. The mayors we have in the studio today are Jake Wagner, Forrest Berry, Dean Hill, Betty Bishop, Dick Zink, and current mayor Sandy Harsha. Today we're going to ask their views on what was happening in Hillsboro, their administrations, some of the major items on the agenda. So for the bicentennial program today, the first mayor that we're going to talk to is Mr. Jake Wagner. Mr. Wagner, glad to have you here today.
Thank you, Jim.
Former Hillsboro mayor, started in 1964.
A long time ago, yes.
1964. And Jake, tell us about Hillsboro. See, this is pre-shopping center, pre-McDonald's, no Hobart, no Wiestek. Tell the viewers how you got started as Hillsboro mayor.
Well, it was a very interesting time because back then you knew about everybody in Hillsboro. Today I can go uptown and not know 10 people out of 100. It was, in comparison, as far as mayor salaries are concerned, I'll take that to start with. My salary was $900 a year.
Hillsboro mayor, $900 a year.
Right, and safety service director was $6,400. Unfortunately, after 3 months, I served without a safety service director, and so I had to perform my duties as mayor of Hillsboro of a night and during the weekend because I worked full-time at a full-time job at the Highland Enterprise Lumber. A lot of interesting things happened. We managed to bring Hobart manufacturing to Hillsboro during my administration. We worked hard at it, and unfortunately we had 8 acres that we had bought and planned on using as the recreational park for our young kids coming up, and that was the only acreage that Modrop Forge would consider in any respect. So we managed to get an agreement from them, the city council and myself, worked out an agreement that we would let them have the 8 acres, providing that they would allow us to pick out 8 acres where we wanted it and they would pay for it, which we picked out the present Dick Schaefer Park as it is known today.
Now, Jake, you mentioned Dick Schaefer Park. So about this time then, 64, 65, is when this ballpark started to be a reality?
Yes, that's it. Before that, we played at the fairground.
At the fairground.
We didn't have any other place to play, and we hadn't developed the ground that Modrop Forge wanted. So I would say that, yeah, in 64, we started the development of the Richard Schaefer Park, and I was successful at that time in getting City Council to allow us to give us $25,000 to promote and start the park. We did an awful lot, most of the labor ourselves. The community was very helpful in every respect. You're going to have to excuse me, I've got to have a cold. But everything wasn't a bed of roses. We, all of us, as I say, worked hard at it and developed it, got it going. We had 4 parks in operation, and we had, on a particular day, we had 7 inches of rainfall in 2 hours and wiped out all 4 ballparks that we had worked so hard for.
And this was 64, 65, right. This heavy rain?
Right. Then another incident that I think in comparison is very interesting in the fact that in the year of 64, even though we were talking about a lot of rain at this one particular time, it was an extremely dry year. And we were not able to provide water. The reservoir was so low that we couldn't, no, we didn't have the reservoir at that time, no. We had the wells and Clear Creek. So the wells were being pumped down so dry and so low, and so was Clear Creek, that we had to go. I called, got civil defense in on it, and they came in. We went up to Ojai Asphaltic Limestone and pumped those 3 quarries into the corrugated pipe that civil defense laid from up there down to the water department here in Hillsboro. And just as well, I had already made arrangements with the civil defense to do the same thing out of Rocky Fork, because at that time we had no idea whether it was going to rain or what was going to happen, so we had everything set up for that purpose. And but fortunately, after pumping the water from Ojai Asphaltic Limestone, it did begin to rain, and that we never had to go through with the other situation down at Rocky Fork.
Jake, you talk about your tenure as mayor. At that time, was the mayor's term a 2-year term or a 4-year term?
It was a 2-year term.
It was a 2-year term?
Yes.
Some of the people in your administration at that time, you mentioned for a while, Hillsboro was without a safety service director. Police chief of Hillsboro?
Bill Willard was the chief of police.
And who was some of your council members?
Okay, I'm going to go into something else. City solicitor, I had asked different ones in my side of the party, and they all turned me down. So I asked Jim Hapner, who was a Republican on the other side, and he said, surprised me, he said, yes, I'll take it. He said, for one reason, just to show you what a good city solicitor can be. And he was. He was excellent.
Jim Hapner.
Right.
Council members, some council members.
Council members were businessmen, business people of Hillsboro at that time. It's been so long ago, I can't, I'm afraid I can't even pull them.
But that's one thing, Jake, you mentioned about, you know, being whether you were Democrat or Republican, once you were in administration in Hillsboro, everybody worked together for the betterment of the city. Right.
That was one of the first things that I did when I became mayor, was to call the city employees together and to inform them that that's exactly the way that I had planned on running the city, and that was on a bipartisan basis, and that's the way we did. We had as many Republican employees as we did Democrats probably, and they stayed in their position, and I didn't go out of my way to hire just Democrats.
And since that time, you know, we're talking 35, 40 years ago, you've been here the entire time and seen what's happened to Hillsboro and the progress that's happened. So what we'll do during this program, Jake, is as we bring in our next former Mayor, Dean Hill, we're gonna, you know, ask for your expertise, and any time during the program, you just chime in with a comment or two.
Okay, fine.
Okay? All right, thank you for being on today for our bicentennial program.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Okay, I'll go ahead and unhook your microphone here, and then we'll bring in Dean Hill. We talked to Jake Wagner. Okay, now we're talking about what year? 1970?
Right, correct.
Dean Hill elected mayor of Hillsboro.
First four-year term.
First four-year term. Went from a two-year term
To a four-year.
to a four-year term.
Then-
Tell the viewers some of the items that happened during your tenure.
Well, I had to write them down.
We're
Well, I
still talking pre-shopping centers.
Just getting ready for
Okay,
shopping centers.
All right.
The most important thing, as far as I was concerned, that the city did in my 8 years, was putting in the new sewer line around Hillsboro to tap. It actually made a circle around Hillsboro, and everybody that wasn't tapped on had leaching fields and things. They could tap onto it. They didn't like it, and I don't blame them in a way. $4,800, $5,000, a lot of money. But it took 3 years to get the program started and finished. Then the next big one was the new water line from the 1946 plant in and up by, went over to 62. The old line was 90 years old, I believe, and old cast iron. So if it broke, we were out of water. So we put that line in, and at the time to put that line in, we didn't have any equipment, and we decided that we didn't want to submit it out for bids. It gets complicated, government gets in, everybody gets in the pie, and you have trouble. So what we did, we went out and bought a drop. It's a big four-wheel digging machine, and we bought it, started out from the water plant, went over to 62. When the project was finished, we'd saved the city of Hillsboro $250,000 because we didn't have any labor except our own labor, which was cheap compared to what you pay contractors.
Right. Okay.
And now Hillsboro has 2 water lines. And the next thing was the city park down on Railroad Street. It took us almost 7 years to get that in, fighting everybody, government, state. But I still think it's a nice park. The kids tear the dickens out of it, but it's got the 4 or 5 tennis courts. The city of Hillsboro was able to tear out their tennis courts and put in their cafeteria,
Right.
come out and use the city, which came in. We tried one time. Cold, somebody wanted to go ice skating, so we bought a liner and put on the court. It froze one time and then it thawed, and it never froze again. So we wasted the money on that liner. And another thing that is not important to the average citizens in Hillsboro, but it was to taxi drivers. We blacktopped the alleys. We had a program to start that. Didn't anymore and get the alleys finished, and one of the taxi cab drivers called up the city to George Gall, and he says, "I don't care what they say, best thing ever done in the city of Hillsboro is you blacktopped alleys," which it keeps traffic off the main streets. And the next one was the pay raises for police and fire. Mayor Harsha was on council at that time and gave the police and firemen the first year 15% raise. They were making like $2,600, $3,200 a year. They got a 15% raise that year. The next year we went back, we raised it 10%. The next year we raised it 15% again. So the police got up to where at least it wasn't a starving salary. And I've said this at that time, and I told George Gall, if you can't pay a policeman $10,000 to go out and a fireman to put their life on the line, you shouldn't pay them anything. They're worth $10,000 a year, and that's it. Then the other thing that started was the shopping centers. The one on, we called the Kmart Shopping Center, where Bob and Carl's at now.
Right.
We were having a strong disagreement with the builders, Kmart people, the big ditch and a traffic light. And we wanted them both done, and they argued and said, no, we won't do either one. Jim Hapner was in the meeting with us, and he leaned over to me, he says, I got an idea. I says, whatever it is, tell them. And he says, well, that's fine. You don't fill the ditch, you don't put a traffic light in, but we will do one thing. There'll be no left turns coming out of the shopping center. You'll turn right, you go to Leesburg, turn around and come back. Well, that didn't go very well with him, so they said, we'll put in the traffic light, but we won't fill the ditch in. So they put the traffic light in, but they didn't fill the ditch in.
And you mentioned, I know Jake Wagner said Jim Hapner as city solicitor, then he carried on that
Right on.
position then
Right on.
to your term. Some of the other people, Dean, that were in the administration, police chief again.
Bill Willard, Cut Bennett was fire chief. Safety
council
service.
members, you mentioned.
Yeah, the mayor was,
Mayor
yeah.
Sandy Harsha. John Fuller, was he on city council at that time, or
Doc Benner,
Doc,
Sanders,
yeah, Doc Sanders, Doc Benner.
Ron Yellow.
You wasn't on there. Yeah, you were on there.
okay, Dick Zink?
Yeah.
One of the other items, you know, we talk about raises for the police, raises for firemen, and that had to be financed. Was the city income tax about the time that you were in there, Dean? I know the taxes are always controversial, but you know, you got to have a way to pay for things like that.
That's true.
You know, today, I imagine every city has got a city income tax, but you know, in the early 70s, I'm sure that wasn't a very popular issue.
Very unpopular. It was in when I became mayor. It was, I don't remember whether it was a vote or how it was, a court, it went into court, and the judge from Wilmington was the judge that was going to hear the case, and he prolonged it for months and months and months, and we were getting upset. And so I talked to Jim Hapner, and Jim says, write the Chief Justice Supreme Court. So I did. And I told him we wanted an answer, whether it was for or against, made no difference. We just wanted an answer to know how we stand. About 3 days later, the judge called Jim Hapner and says, the income tax is out. And he threw it out right now. Then they turned right around and put it back in again. And I think it was only 0.5% when it went in that time. But without the income tax, you can't operate city. It's just mathematically impossible to do it, unless you don't have anybody working for you.
Jake talked about the reservoir not being in existence. About what time was the reservoir put in then, Dean, if you can remember then? You mentioned the water, the new water system.
Well, I
think I am wrong.
yeah, the reservoir was in because I know we were fishing out there in the 50s.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And we'll talk later about the more current mayors about the new reservoir.
Yes, that was Mayor Bishop's.
And as we talk, and you know, you mentioned, okay, shopping centers, it's kind of interesting how things get started. You know, everything has kind of went to the north side of town. You know, anything happened during your administration that caused everything to go to one side of the city compared to going to other sides of the city?
Sewer lines.
Sewer
lines and water.
Sewer lines and water.
And 62 south, everybody thought it would go 62 south or it would go 50 west. Well, the sewer line stopped at the corporation limit, which is about 500 or 600 feet east of Rotary, or Robert Shaw at that time. They run a line down to Robert Shaw, put a pump station in so they could get on the sewer. But there was no way they were going to take the line out that way because it'd have to be all forced water. And the sewer lines, as most of the mayors will tell you, they don't like to have a lot of pumps because they break down and they cost a lot of money and a lot of maintenance. So they come this direction and everything would flow naturally, and I don't think there's a pump out here except going at the sewer plant itself. With the south, there's a big sewer pump at Rotary Forms that allowed Rotary to put on, and then I think the sewer line comes from across 247 and across, and then pumped up the hill.
And then you mentioned too about sewer lines. Of course, rock was probably a factor too. You'd hit rock certain places. And
It was.
couldn't get in.
It was an odd situation. We had a company come in and drill, and they drilled all over Hillsboro and said there's no rock. And we all just stood and looked at him. This town's full of rock. He said, we never hit a rock. Well, They hit rock, that's for sure. And they did a lot of blasting to put that sewer line in.
Dean, you mentioned rotary forms. During the early 70s, what were the factories here in Hillsboro? And the other former mayors, they can help out yet. Rotary forms, employed quite a few people.
Robert Shaw.
Robert Shaw.
Moore Drop Forge.
Okay.
White's Foundry, Bell's Foundry, Gross Fible. And I believe that's it at the time.
And we were really at that time, and we'll talk to Mayor Betty, but Hobart wasn't here yet in the early 70s, were they?
Oh yeah, they were here. They were here,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm just trying to get things dated. But
They came in, I think, in the 60s.
No, they
70?
around 71. I started
71.
when they opened up.
Okay, all right, because Dick would have been there when they opened up. Okay.
Well, that was my first year as mayor then, but they were already there because I was uptown.
But I started
Yeah.
in June of that year, and I was there 29 and a half years and retired, and it was in 70. It
Should
opened
own
up right in your term.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, Dean, thanks
Jim?
for being on the show.
Nice.
I'll
Thank
go
you for
ahead
having me.
and Unhook you here, and we'll get Betty Bishop up here. So we'll
Thank
go from the early 70s. We'll hook the microphone up here and be seated, and we'll talk about a lot of activities. Betty, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Betty Bishop, Mayor of Hillsboro for what years, Betty?
1980 to December 31st, 1994.
1994.
Yeah.
Tell the viewers some of the items. A lot of things I can remember reading in the paper where Betty went to Japan on a trip, I think, one time, and so many things happened. I think possibly Southern State got built during your tenure out here.
Yes. If you stop and ask me what's the most important things, and if I could put them in order, probably one of the most important things was hiring Kelly Shelton as Safety Service Director. At the time, I didn't know it would be that important, but the man had a mind that there's only one person I've seen in later years that could compare to it, and that's the present Safety Service Director. The more I work with him, the more I realize that he is of the same caliber. But Kelly stayed the full 15 years with me, and tenure is very, very important, I feel.
Kelly Shelton.
Kelly Shelton. When I look back and think what was the most important thing that we accomplished in our administration, I would have to say Southern State Community College. If it hadn't have been for Southern State Community College, there would have been no Weiss Tech. Second thing would have probably been the purchase of the Bob and Dorothy Shanks farm. That's where Weiss Tech sits right now. That's where the new water plant, or the new water reservoir is. That's where the new Liberty Park. We called it Fact Park back then, so if I mess up on that, excuse me, but Liberty Park is on that, and that would probably be the second most important thing. Third would probably be the Weiss Tech factory. Going to Japan and having the opportunity to sign the agreement over there to bring the factory to Hillsboro. Bob Hodson and Dave Fenstermaker and Kelly were with me, and people make the difference. I mean, those people were there and helped make everything happen. Just reminiscing some old things, cleaning up the old reservoir. There was a lot of things that happened over previous years that we don't even like to think about or talk about, and we had some engineers that told us how they thought things could be corrected there, and I never will forget Ronnie Hennison. Will remember this very clearly, and probably Dick too, because he was on council. They told us that when the weather changes, the water flips over, and that's what causes your water to taste bad. So we went out there and we thought, well, before the water changes in the spring, let's drain the bottom off of it. Well, we went out there and those controls were rusted shut and everything else. And I remember Ronnie looking at me and saying, I don't know whether we better do this or not. And I said, Ronnie, something's got to be done. Columbus took a chance. We got to do something. And we opened those valves and drained water off of there probably for 8 or 10 hours, didn't we, Ronnie? And that started the cleanup process of the reservoir, and that sure helped there.
And you mentioned, Betty, Ron Hennison Sr. What was his job with the city of Hillsboro?
When I was first elected mayor, Ron was at the sewer plant, and then he moved to the water plant. And he's been one steady employee, I'll tell you. I figure every mayor will say the same thing, that Ronnie Hennison was sure an asset to Hillsboro. Then the new sewer plant. The innovative technology that is in that sewer plant, and just in this administration, I see that they have upgraded that, and that's great. You know, the mayors before us have set the stone for us to grow on, and Sandy's come right on behind and just keep it going. Blacktop in the streets. I mean, Dean started in his administration of blacktop and alleys, and we took that on and worked hard on that. Harry Sonner Road was not there. I can remember Bill McCrite and John Robert Evans and I going out and sitting down talking to those people, and them agreeing to give that land and making Harry Sonner Road a possibility. Another big thing is the widening of 62. The state was going to come in and put a new bridge right down there at Marble Branch, and they told us that they was going to put a 2-lane bridge through there. We got a hold of them and said that won't work. Why won't it work? Because traffic is getting so bad out there, we're going to need at least 3 lanes, and we request a 4-lane. Well, they finally agreed to go to 3-lane, and we still wouldn't settle for that. And we went back and yelled and says, wait a minute, you know, we got many years for that bridge to be in there, and so finally we got them to agree to put the 4-lane bridge in there. So upgrading city equipment, fire department, fire trucks, life squad equipment. Now the life squad started full-time, I believe, in Dean's administration, and that has surely been a big benefit to the city. The flushing of hydrants, getting water. Police department. Probably the big thing that happened in police department in my administration was DARE, the war on drugs. Probably one of the biggest disappointments that I had was when I came into office. Just before I came in and then right after I came in, we had lost several of our young men to what they suspicioned was drug activity. And so we started extended training and making sure that we had protective equipment for the people involved.
And Betty, I think Jake Wagner, he had mentioned about the ballpark and county fairs, and I know you were very instrumental in starting the girls' little league out at the ballpark. I can remember that, and kept on with developing Dick Schaefer Park. A few of your memories on that.
Sports is, I love sports, and before I was mayor, I was on the recreation commission and worked a lot of hours at the ballpark, and so after I was elected mayor, Dick Schaefer came to me one day and he said, Betty, he said, we're going to need to expand the ballpark. He said back several years ago that I'd worked with Dick and Squeak Collins and some of those to initiate a girls program. And we didn't have any place for them to play. The girls were playing in the daytime, the boys were playing at night. So I went out and sat down with Alice Kasner, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. And I told Alice, I said, we've got a big need. We need more diamonds for the children to play on, and no money to do it. She pulled out her checkbook and wrote me a check for $25,000. And there's only one stipulation, and we had to buy a left-handed catcher's mitt so that the left-handed kids could have the opportunity to be catchers if they wanted to. We did that, and that little park back there for those little kids now, if people haven't seen it, they need to go out there and look at that, because it's
really developed, hasn't it?
It sure has.
And Betty, one other thing, and I know you've got a lot of items, and this may have started with Dean Hill administration, Festival of the Bells. How did that all get started?
Well, the Festival of the Bells started after the 175th birthday celebration. John Levo, Mike Yoakum, and Richard Van Zant walked in my office one evening. I was in there, it was late, it was almost dark, and I was known to go in and work by myself a lot of times at night, and I was sitting in there by myself working, and they walked in and they said, we want to talk to you about something. I said, what do you want to talk about? And they said, we want to head up the 175th birthday celebration. I said, and I answered a prayer, you know, and those guys, I mean, there was many people involved in it, but those are the three guys that took the bull by the horns and initiated it. And then, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 years after that they then started the Festival of the Bells. But that's community. I mean, to go to that festival and see people out in the middle of the street enjoying each other, that's community. Yeah.
Other memories, Betty, the fire chief at that time during your administration?
Tom Stevens was fire chief. Bill Willard was police chief, and then Doug Trout was police chief for a while. Mike Lingfield, and then Nick Thompson.
Okay.
And then, as I said, at the sewer plant was Ron Hennison when it first started, and then Dick Zachman came on and was the sewer plant supervisor. And then after he left, another gentleman come on, and I cannot recall his name. Water plant was Joe Frump, and then Ronnie went to the water plant after Joe left. And then Dave Lowell in the fire department served as assistant chief. Water and sewer maintenance was Roger Whiting. I think Roger was there my whole tenure. Jerry Lieber, those are some of the names I can think about, was there the entire time. Street department was Bob Ward and Dave Cheney. Secretary Gert Hopkins. I mean, we can't forget that lady. She was secretary for Dean, and she's probably there for you too, wasn't she, Jake? She was there a long time, and she was just everybody's. She did everybody a good job. It didn't make any difference whether you was Democrat or Republican. When you was in there, Gert did you a good job. And then Becky Kramer come on, and Becky was in the water office before she came on as our secretary, and then Mona Parker then moved into the water office. So.
Okay, well, Betty, a lot of things happened during your tenure,
Yep.
and appreciate you being on the show.
Yep. Well, it takes people to make it happen, and there was a lot of people. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but we've all surrounded ourselves with good people, and that's what makes it happen.
And that's the key, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that
I'll go
is.
ahead and unhook your microphone here, and we'll bring up Dick Zink. And I know, Dick, as far as your tenure for mayor was maybe a year or two, but your name keeps coming up as being on city council. So this was kind of a continual thing for you as far as being involved with the city of Hillsboro, wasn't it?
Yes, I think I first went on council when Dean was mayor, and I served one term there and moved out of the ward and had to go back to, well, I was running dry cleaner, and I didn't have time to run a dry cleaner and work at Hobart and serve on council at the same time. So after I sold the cleaners, well, then I got back on council, and I served 1 year as council at large. And then Gert Hopkins, as Betty mentioned, of course, Gert was on the other side of the party lines, but she kept encouraging me to run for president. I think Sandy was president one term, and he decided not to run, and I said, oh, I don't think I'd be interested. She said, oh, go ahead, you've been up here, you know what's going on. So I ended up running for president of the council, and I think I must have served about 7 or 8 terms there, about 15 or 16 years probably. And then Betty resigned from the mayor's position, and I was appointed to fill out her term, which was a year. And actually what I tried to do was to carry out whatever request council had, and to finish out the things that Betty had started and council had requested to be done. But it was an enjoyable experience, and I think serving as president of council, I really had more memories than as a short 1 year as mayor.
I know, Dick, and you know, we mentioned, when we talked to Jake Wagner, you know, pre-Kmart, pre-shopping centers, and during the whole tenure, you know, Dean Hill, Forrest Berry, Betty Bishop, you know, up to now, fast foods coming in, McDonald's, new shopping centers, Kmart switching buildings 3 different times, Kroger's moving to different buildings, but just so many different things and so many additions to the city of Hillsboro.
Well, I know when Southern State came in, I was president of council at that time, and we had a couple council members that really didn't want to sell the land. So we met on committee on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night before Thanksgiving that year, and we ended up having everybody, after we hashed the thing around, everybody agreed it was the best thing to do. And being on the groundbreaking there, and also the groundbreaking at Wiestek, I felt like I was very fortunate to be there, and also the grand opening of the Kmart. That was my first official duty, and I think if probably the band hadn't been playing out there that day, they could hear my knees knock. But it was quite an experience, and I guess I've been very fortunate. I was born in Hillsboro, raised in Hillsboro, and had an opportunity to know all these people all my life: Sandy, Jake, Betty, Dean, and I think that Hillsboro is very fortunate in having the type people they've had to serve the city. And like they've mentioned before, once a person is elected in Hillsboro, I feel that they do their best to leave their political coat outside when they come in, and they do what they can for the community. And there's a lot of places that's really not like that.
I know we talked about, even when you're not mayor, and if you're not on council, you know, you stay involved. You know, Dean Hill, he's out taking care of Liberty Park,
yeah,
mowing out there.
Is that what's wrong with it? I didn't.
Betty Bishop, just continuing to work. You know, Jake Wagner, Sandy Harsha, yeah, being on council before he's mayor. Forrest Berry with legal work and different things. But everybody, even when they're not mayor, they continue to work to better Hillsboro.
Jim, could I inject something here?
Sure.
When I bought Bainbridge Lumber and could no longer serve as mayor, I did not run. They purchased out there where Hobart is and Southern State and all. That was purchased during my administration. I mean, after I went to Bainbridge, I came back on council and was asked to be president of council so that we could break the tie and buy that 167 acres, which everything has happened since.
And who owned that land, Jake? Do you remember? Rice owned that land? Okay.
Yeah, right.
And that land was attractive because what Dean said, water and sewer on this side of town. But what a key thing that was. And, you know, Dick mentioned, and Betty said in her highlights, Southern State, you know, there was some skepticism, you know, to use that land for, you know, Southern State for development. What a great decision that was to do that for, you know, Southern State to be a central campus. Likewise, for your decision, you know, where the Hobart land was. But and that got Dick employed here for 30 years in Hobart.
Yeah.
167 acres included all all of the, what you're talking out there now, but even the Justice Center and all that's out there now, all of that was on that 167 acres.
And you know, we mentioned the new Justice Center, and I'm sure Sandy will talk about it when he comes up. Jake, in the early 60s then, population of Hillsboro, if you had to guess,
A little over 5,000.
little over 5,000. Dick, now 6,000, 7,000?
It's what, 7,000, Sandy?
Just short of it.
Just,
6,000.
okay, just short.
It has to be 5,000 to be a city.
I would still like to see a real good census. I think it would help us in the community, because I can't believe that we've only grown 2,000 people in the last 40 years. But we have to take their numbers.
Right, right.
For me to believe that we only have like maybe 100 more people than we had 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It
Doesn't jive. No.
But Dick, as we talk about things, and I know you're staying involved now, helping daughter in the restaurant business a little bit, playing with.
I'm going to get a job so I can rest up. Well, I've also been appointed to the election board. I've served two terms on the County Board of Election, or 2 years. I have 2 years left on this term, and I enjoy that. And just being able to see the community grow and the different things happen that I've seen. And I know I'd like to take an opportunity now to wish all the mayors that are coming in the future the same good luck and fortune as we have had in the past. I guess that's about the best thing could happen to this community.
Dick, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Longtime friend, known the family for years, done a great job for the city of Hillsboro. County every once in a while and checks on son Steve, I imagine.
Jimmy Kelly is an important person who carries his telephone on his hip.
Okay, he's got that's for daughter Andrea. Okay.
She bought me this phone.
We'll bring in our current mayor, Sandy Harsha.
Jim, thank you.
Sandy.
Yes, sir.
Glad you can be with us today.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
We talked about Jake Wagner started, and we'll go ahead and sit down, in the early 60s. And from that, of course, you, a lifetime resident of Hillsboro, got in the town city council, now mayor. Some of your highlights, some of the people you're working with for our viewers.
Well, I guess I could start off by saying, Dean Hill was the person who got me interested in politics back just when I was a kid, obviously, back in the 70s. I've served, I'd say 2 terms as a councilman at large, and 1 term as the president of city council. And then I guess I retired from politics for a little while and started to work again at the Harsha Monument Company, which is my business here in town. I'm not a full-time mayor. I have to run my business also. And then I was approached to run for mayor, so I did, and was elected. And I guess maybe before I even took office, I think just in the interim there, just before the turn of the year, change of the year, we had, I guess, one of the most interesting, scary things to me, all of a sudden, that the Friends of the Colony were going to quit. They were all tired of trying to run the Colony Theater. It had been a situation where they'd been turned over to the city and given to the city. And I think Carl Hollingsworth was working up there at the time, and they had to have a change of leadership up there. So we over there in this building, and it was 0 inside, 0 outside, and it was kind of scary for a person just coming in as the mayor, and the first thing all of a sudden is a big problem. Well, Dick and I'm sure all of you know what that's like. Anyway, that was one of the accomplishments I think we've had, is being able to keep the classic opera here. It's had its problems with roof, furnace, and things like that. So we've been able to offer entertainment on a weekly basis. It keeps the uptown viable on the Saturday nights. So it's been good. That's one thing I'm proud of. Another thing is we're sitting right here today. It's this community access. I think when Ron and I looked at that, it was a monitor in the high school building, and one time in a closet, and it's gone a long way since then. And now we do have a place that we can have programs like this and lots of other activities, parties and what have you, so I'm very proud of that.
And I know the Hannisons, the entire Hannison family, should just be complimented for what the hours they've put in to renovate this plant
Over the past several years, it's really been something what they have been able to do.
And Sandy, we talked a new city building, new office for the mayor.
New city building. I guess that would just, unfortunately, there was a death of the man that owned the North High Street Lounge, or what was a Country Tune Saloon at the time, and it was very close proximity to the rest of the city building. So there was an opportunity there to get that piece of property. As most of you know, it was pretty well run down at that problem, and there were problems in there. So we were able to purchase that building and then move the city building over to the present location, which also goes in with some other things that we had. We did move or made a contribution to the Justice Center to put a municipal courtroom out north of town, which I think was a good move, because when we got that done, that left more room up in the present city building for the fire and police. The fire are a little bit crowded right now, and they're probably in the very near future going to have to think of other locations for this. And I think possibly maybe the police department could utilize the building if the fire department were moved somewhere else.
And Sandy, the former mayors have talked about the city growing factory-wise. We talked about Weiss Tech, Southern State, the Hobart Corporation, and one of the things that made that possible, I know Dean Hill said, you know, water and sewer, a new reservoir, and that may have been, you know, I can't remember the exact year. Of course, it's right behind where I live on Self Road. Right. But the new reservoir, how did that all come about, if you can kind of recollect that the city decided that, you know, we're going to need a new reservoir?
That pretty much was in Betty's administration, I think. Yes, she would know more about that than I was.
Right.
What we are doing now, we're in the process, and Dick was in with this too, not only me, but the building of the new water treatment plant to increase the capacity of the water that we can treat from 1 million to 1.5 million per day. So that's a project that's in the works right now, and I think both Dick and I have really we've had our problems with this. And I remember when I first came in, that was one of the issues that we needed to resolve, and it wasn't easy to resolve, but we did. And in about 15 months, we should have a new water treatment plant that'll be better to serve the people of Hillsboro.
And the old reservoir now, Sandy, that's strictly used as backup, the one along 62, or what's the purpose?
It's been used as backup, and we have had some, they have been draining that and keeping it cleaned out on the bottom. We've had trouble with the sediment in there, and they have been using that. And it's worked out all right. We have a very capable plant manager out there right now, Mark Vandenberg, who's kept on top of that, and we're pretty proud of the way it's working.
And you know, as we talk, and you know, every town, I think Hillsboro is lucky. The downtown is still viable. I mean, you see people, you know, with the traffic light and the banks on the corner, that, you know, a lot of people in downtown Hillsboro. And I know when there was first talk of, well, the shopping centers, you know, it'll ruin the downtown. But the downtown in Hillsboro is still very viable.
It is, and I think a lot of mayors have contributed to that. And it's very fortunate that we're continuing to do revitalization and upgrading and things that, if the downtown goes out, and it would be terrible. We're all very proud of the city of Hillsboro. I think it's a very clean, very nice town, and we're fortunate to live here.
And I know you always hear comments, and probably all the mayors have heard comments. It's so hard to get through Hillsboro.
Oh,
traffic flow.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. It is, and it's a problem we're constantly working on. Harrisana Road with deceleration lanes. There will be traffic signalization out there with the coming of Walmart, which is going to be another big thing. That's from my understanding, the latest projection is they're going to have this. They plan to have it ready by September. It was December, so they're moving along with that. It's just a tremendous amount of growth. I wish I could say we'd had some more. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Sandy, I know we've all heard a lot about traffic, but I still maintain the idea that if you don't have traffic, then you really got a problem.
That's right.
Quite frankly,
you've got traffic up there going through your community. You've got people passing through. It's got to be the best than not having anybody.
I agree with you, and I appreciate that more now as I've been into it to understand what you mean. That's true. If you do have traffic, we can make some improvements on it. Bypass routes and things like that are a long shot, and they should be done, and they probably will be done in the future. But it's not going to be anything real soon.
I think one of the exciting things also for the city, and I know part of the bicentennial program was on education, is that Hillsboro is going to be involved in the construction of new schools for the school children. And I believe the south side of Hillsboro will be one of those sites for construction of new schools.
I'd imagine when schools are built down there, that will open up a lot of areas in the south. We've mentioned just nothing in the north, but that's where it is right now. But the south will become pretty, if we ever get a school down there, and when that starts opening up, like I said, there will have to be sewer pumps to pump it up, but there will be activity down there.
And we also want to mention, Sandy, the YMCA. I think, you know, communities that have YMCAs, it's such a gathering point, and that's one of the things that, you know, we've been working for a long time on out at the park, and, you know, with a temporary facility now, but with construction really to begin maybe this year.
Very hopeful. Of course, they do have the YMCA now, which is up over Classic Real Estate, that is a fitness center, and it's well received. It was unbelievable. I'm surprised the number of people that are there all the time. So obviously, there's a very good need for a YMCA. Very hopefully that the city will have a contribution to that of about $500,000 to the YMCA project, and hopefully there's a meeting here, maybe by this next council meeting, we should have some more information on the YMCA and how we're going to financially take care of it.
And Sandy, you mentioned council meeting. Tell the viewers who are some of the current people involved on town council, safety service director, those people.
Of course, Ralph Van Zandt has been my safety service director since I took office in 1996. Council person was Clarence Thurman, with Charlie Walker, Dave Myers, John Dodds. Let's see, help me out if I can miss him. Dick Donnelly's on there, yes.
Okay.
And Peggy McClellan.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So Fred Berry is our legal advisor.
And Fred Berry, his father is former mayor of Hillsboro.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
And Nick Thompson has been the police chief, of course, as long as I've been there. And Tom Stevens resigned when I was up there. So I believe it was in my administration, surely. Yeah. And
Can I ask a question?
yeah.
Has there been any consideration by you, safety service director, member of council, of having that broadcast over the Hillsboro station?
Having what? The council? Yes, I think we're planning on doing that. Isn't that right, Ron?
The town
actual,
city council,
yeah,
yes.
actual city council meetings. We do tape them, but they're not live.
Yeah. Usually, if they are taped, then they're broadcast the next night. But that's something that, yes, the Hillsboro Community TV is wanting to do that. So we'll work on that.
It'd be nice if we could move out to this location to do it, where you have all your cameras. That maybe something we ought to consider.
Sandy, we talked, the fire chief is now?
No, TV, Jerry Powell.
Jerry Powell. Okay.
Right.
As we are going, you know, 2003, what are some things, if you had to say 5 years down the road, Sandy, what are some things that you think will be happening in Hillsboro? Just
5 years on down the road?
Yeah, just 2 or 3 things. I know you mentioned Walmart being built, YMCA being built. Any involvement, I know factories are wanting to relocate, and as Dean mentioned, they all want a deal. You know, they want tax abatements and things. But 5 years down the road, some things that you might see happening in Hillsboro.
Projecting 5 years, I think we're going to have buy some more industrial land. We've used the industrial park up pretty much. There are just very few acres over here on Homestead Drive right now in the back part of that. It's not really very good for development. I think we need to get. In 5 years, I think we'll have a development director with actively pursuing industry. I think the commercial growth will continue to go on, and hopefully the income tax will keep up. We were up 7.13% over last year, which is good considering that a lot of places didn't do that well. I see a lot. Would you mention growth from the south? Possibly. I think, of course, our schools will be built. Very hopefully, I would hope that we still have the same little town, or a reasonably nice town that we have here right now, that everybody likes and seems to want to come here and live, and keep the beauty and the niceness of it.
It's as pretty a city as you can find in Ohio, isn't it?
Well, I think so, but I guess we're all prejudiced.
And all the people here in the studio, you know, lifelong residents of this area.
Mm-hmm.
We have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, we do.
We have all the recreation you'd ever want with the 2 lakes, and within 45 minutes you can be to one of the biggest shopping centers in 3 cities. So we have it.
And
I think, too, Jim, that starting clear back from my administration and to each mayor has taken over and all, we all had the same beautiful city to work with. When I started, perhaps it was smaller, but the trees were here, the wide streets were here, the wonderful people were here, and they're still here today.
great point, and I know Dick Zink's comment, hey, if you don't have traffic, that's when you gotta worry.
You can talk about widening roads, for instance, 62, we just cannot take those trees out. We've lost the beauty of the whole city. And once that's gone, once that old mature growth in trees is gone, we've lost an awful lot. And I would like to say here before I leave here that I would like to express my appreciation for all the mayors that are sitting here right now. I know how sometimes it's not always an easy job. Sometimes it's a very rewarding job. But I think you've all done a wonderful job, and I think Hillsboro is very lucky to have reaped the benefits of every one of you.
Okay, Mayor Harsha, I think that's a good way. Our hour's up, and
I've enjoyed it, and thank you. You've done a good job too.
Appreciate that, and we'll just keep Mayor Harsha sitting here as we conclude the bicentennial program, 200 years, 1803, 2003.